Welcome back, everybody, to the School Leadership Show. This is Mike Dowdy. With me as my co-host, Jenn David Lang. Hi, Jenn.
Hey there.
And Jenn is going to introduce our special guest, and we are super excited because we are recording this in March, which is Women's History Month, and that will make sense in just about a couple seconds. Jenn, go.
Great. Thanks, Mike. I met today's guest, LaVonna Roth, about 5 years ago at a conference where she and I were both presenting. She was originally a teacher, and now she's an incredibly moving and deeply inspirational speaker. I know because I've seen her deliver several impactful keynotes myself. She speaks about all kinds of topics connected to leadership, and I'm not sure if she meant this from the start, but her topics particularly connect with women leaders. And since, like Mike said, it's Women's History Month, we thought we'd invite her on the podcast to share her message and how she inspires all leaders, really, but women in particular. But I thought I would just share a little anecdote before we begin. I went to a full day workshop of LaVonna's about 5 years ago on presentation skills. And I took away a lot, LaVonna, that I still use today. But one thing I remember, she talked about the importance of humor. And she's funny. We're always so serious, Mike, about this leadership business, and she's funny. So she had us do this choral exercise at the end where I think we stood up in partners, if I'm remembering correctly. And she said, look at each other and repeat after me. So LaVonna would say, education may change and times may change. And so we said to our partner, education may change, times may change. Then LaVonna said, the world may change. We said, the world may change. And then she said, but one thing I know is that I will always be better looking than you. And we all cracked up. And it's just a nice little anecdote, sort of silly. But anyway, yesterday was LaVonna's birthday and anniversary. Happy birthday. Congratulations. I won't ask if either's a big one, but we're really excited to have you here today on the show. Welcome, LaVonna.
Thank you. Oh my goodness, that was an awesome introduction. And yes, you just shared a great anecdote. I cannot believe it's been that many years that we have been connected. And I'm so
Yes.
happy we have. Yes.
Yes.
Now, LaVonna, where does this podcast find you today?
I am home. I'm in my home office, so you all can see it. I know that those listening can't, but yeah, I'm in St. Pete, Florida. So I live in the Tampa
Nice.
Bay area.
Very
Yeah,
cool. I
yeah.
bet that beats upstate New York, I'm pretty sure. So,
This
all
time of
right.
year, I'm gonna say yes.
All right.
Definitely not mud season down there.
No, but we are having allergy season right now, and it is not fun. So, but well, I'll take the sunshine any day.
Well, and that connects with your theme, I guess, sunshine. We should start there. So you're all about this S.H.I.N.E framework, which is an acronym, S.H.I.N.E. Can you tell us a little bit about this framework and how it applies to leaders in general and for this month, our women leaders?
Yes, yes. So S.H.I.N.E was originally going to be all around helping support students on how they're actually smart outside of reading, writing, math, and science. And what I didn't anticipate were the number of people that came up and said, you have no idea how badly I needed this. And these were adults that were military, police, superintendents, teachers. And I thought, holy cow, I got to back this up and actually look at the adults in the building. And then realize I had to back it up even more with those that are leading, because that impacts everything in the building. And if we aren't on board as leaders with the goal where we're supposed to be or need to be or want to be, it's so much more challenging. So S.H.I.N.E, though, stands letter S is self. And we talk about what are your strengths, gifts, skills, and talents. So from a leadership perspective, what are those? What are you good at doing is the whole narrative around that. H is heart. It's really about passion. I just didn't use P for passion because spine is not the same as shine. So I focused on the passion though, and that's just it's really the heart. Like what do you love to do? Where does that energy fire you up and where does it drain you? And in leadership, it can be all kinds of things that can give us that energy and also suck it right out of us. I is going to be inspire, because you have this beautiful package under S and H about you. However, how do you stay inspired? How do you inspire others? Because life does throw the curveballs. N is navigate, meaning what do you do with everything that I just talked about? It's you putting it into action. It's your story. It's your journey. It's what you want, not necessarily what society or life drives us to be. So if again, we're talking about leadership, specifically, how do you want to lead in a way and put these things into play instead of just talk about them? And then E is exceptional because you are becoming the exceptional person, family member, leader, fill in the blank. You are becoming the exceptional person you were meant to be, not anybody else. And that's what Shine represents.
I like that you adapted it, right? That you were using it to talk about students and then you realized how much it applied to the adults in the room. Why do you think this message connects so much to women leaders in particular? And from the end, from your navigating your story, what is your story from how you went from teacher to such an inspirational speaker?
Oh, well, thank you. I'm just always working to be better and do better. And my story is been all over the place with lots of events happening that can force us or cause us to choose paths such as drugs and alcohol, or the other direction of just how do I come out with this as stronger and just be the kind of person I really want to be. And to this day, I don't really know exactly why I chose the other route of like, how do I learn from this? And when things happen and it stinks and I feel like just sitting and sobbing, but looking instead at, okay, but what might I learn from this instead? And that I realize that that really does take the choice,
Mm,
an awareness of it all, but then even to choose this. And it's not always easy, especially in the moment. And this is where I've allowed myself to feel as a human. Like it's okay. Like you can be human, you're going to have emotions, you can have a little bit of a meltdown. And I'll give myself my space for that. But then I'm also thinking, okay, but what can you control in this moment? What could you do for your next step or your next decision? And that's what helps to pull me forward through that. It's also talking to other people really helps, And so I think when leaders connect with other leaders and us, I'll put it this way. I think leaders, and from a human perspective, we all go through things. And so how do we get through that? And I just find out a lot of times we think we're alone. We forget that so many people go through so many things, and it may not be the same thing that we have, but it's still the emotions are still there, the fear, the frustration, or the anger, or the letdown, like it's all there. And I feel like when we talk about it, people can resonate, connect with that. And the more that we're talking about leadership and women's, like particularly in leadership, because there are differences, whether we want to say it or not, there are differences in it. And because of that, it just creates an opportunity, a platform to talk about it, to then say, okay, but we're picking ourselves up with what can we control to move forward.
mm. So it sounds like, your focus on emotions and your sort of human-centered focus on leadership is part of what is appealing to women. I have all your letters, Shine. None of them are talking about, how well do you balance the budget or how well do you, like discipline the kids or, those kinds of things. But it's a very human or, interpersonal skills seem to be at the heart of a lot of what you do. And, people used to denigrate those and call them soft skills. But really, I think these are not soft skills. These are the essential skills, and all the other skills are built on top of them.
Yeah, we've been calling them necessary skills for a while because they're necessary to navigate, being a problem solver. I love that you said I was funny because that's the one thing that I wish I was more of. So I appreciate that, you saying that. But even just looking at things with curiosity and, thinking about what ifer is what I call them. Like they're a what if or like, well, what if we tried this or what if we tried that? And just to get yourself to think from a different perspective. And all of those are gifts. I think, kind of forget about them, or we think everybody has them and they don't.
Mm,
Well, and right, like think about the people we've known over the course of our careers who have lost jobs. It's rarely because of technical competence. It's because of those other skills that people just don't have and haven't honed, that they can't work with others.
Yes, and that's a great point. And I also feel like even when we work with others, we start comparing ourselves and we see what they're good at doing, and we're like, oh, but I'm not that good. I'm probably going to be let go. And then you see somebody else with a different skill, and you're like, okay, well, I'm not that good on that either. So they're really looking at me and thinking how terrible I am or not. Who is that? What do they think they're doing? They don't even deserve to be here. But that's all our own voices because they, just like them, we don't have it all either. They don't have it all. But that's the beauty of this, is when you have these conversations around how does each person shine individually, what value or what strengths do they bring to the table? Now you realize you're working together in collaboration and honoring each other for what that is, instead of the expectation of the mirrors of, but I don't have that.
mm,
Correct. That's okay.
mm.
So, okay, so now I got to go for it. because Jen and I were talking before you got on, LaVonna, and that is one of
Oh.
my biggest sort of awakenings when somebody told it to me. I was like, holy cow, that's it. That typically, if there's a job posting, and like if I, as a man, particularly a middle class white man, if I look at that job posting and I can check two or three of those 15 things, I'm like, sure, I'll apply for it. Why not? Whereas typically, I'm painting with a broad brush here, but this has been explained to me that women, on the other hand, tend to not apply for the job unless they check every single box, which I think fits into that whole imposter syndrome thing. So, you want to talk about that, like put some context around it, and then maybe talk about how do we help women move past that when we're in a business that's primarily, the employees are primarily female and the superintendents are white guys. And I was telling Jen, I did a presentation at a superintendent's conference recently, and I'm standing up on the stage looking out at the audience, and it's they all look like me. It's pretty much, stale, male, and pale. Like, how do we get past that?
He said, only I can say that because that's what I am, Jen. You can't say
I have never heard it put that way. This is awesome.
that.
Oh, Mike, that's funny. Yes, so I was actually, I need to look this back up because I was just talking about this last week. So I love that you were having this conversation too, that there was a study that was done, and I can't remember the percentages, which is why I need to look it up. But it is similar to what you were just saying. It's something like a male can look at a job description and what the criteria with it and say, oh, I meet 50% of it, I'm going for it. And then a woman can see like and meet 90% and feel like, oh, but I don't have that 10%. So I think that is a fascinating one to talk about. I would love to hear from you, both of you, also on this, because like, why do us women feel like we have to have 100%? And if I were to dig back and figure out some things, like what comes to mind is I even think of like, let's say the 1950s, when women primarily were from home, did not have outside jobs. They dressed up for the husband to come home, took care of the kids, did the grocery shopping, did the cleaning. Dinner was served at a certain time. There were all these expectations of how you looked, and it was considered a reflection of the man of the home, right? So I feel like in some ways, I wonder if we still have that, plus other societal things that have continued, norms, expectations have continued, that we still are adopting and feeling that way. Because what really hit me one day is I was talking to my husband, and thankfully we have very non-traditional roles. He does the cooking, the clean, sorry, I do the cooking, but he cleans up, he does the cleaning of the house, he does the laundry. And I'm grateful for that. But I realized at one point, talking to him, I was thanking him for all that he does and contributes, and for being open, which I don't think I could have married him otherwise, but being open to the non-traditional roles. Because women, though, when they did start going back to work, during the war and going into factories and working, never gave up all of the duties back at home. Right. It was like this full-time job of doing everything for the home, which is a lot in itself, but then started adding in a full-time, if possibly part-time, but a lot of times full-time job on top of that. And now women are doing both, and we feel like we're a failure if we don't.
And yeah, no, I think that's part of a perfectionism that holds a lot of women back, and we could talk about that. And I also think that it's slow for old views to die, right? Even though you're talking about a time that now is what, like three-quarters of a century ago, it's still, if you say to someone, okay, close your eyes, picture a leader, they're going to picture a man, even in 2025 while we're recording this. And so I think women are more cautious. If I'm going to step into this role that really doesn't belong to me, then I have to make sure I check all the boxes and more. And I was just before this podcast because I wasn't really sure. I think school-based principals it's close to 50-50 men and women. It might even be a little bit higher for women. But superintendents, it's still only a third to a quarter of school superintendents are women.
Now, we could take it from the other perspective, and that if you look at the superintendency these days, I would argue it's one of the most unpleasant jobs that exists. So maybe it's
So
that
women are
women
smart.
are too smart to take that job. Like I
Dear,
would,
dear. Well,
But
that
yet
could
I go ahead. Yeah, I was going to say, but I know a lot of assistant superintendents who are women who are doing a lot of the work behind the scenes, just not getting the credit for it. So, and the salary for it too. What were you going to say, LaVonna?
No, that's a great point too. And a lot of the assistant superintendents I know are like, I have zero desire to become a superintendent because now I'm officially every responsibility is on you. But then I also do wonder if behind the scenes some of that fear that's internal of like, but I don't know if I'm actually qualified or, really should I be in that position? Because we can use out external excuses like, oh, I don't want that because that's a huge responsibility. And that could likely be very true for people. But I also can't help but wonder some of that internal part, and you had mentioned, Mike, about the imposter syndrome. And I feel like that it is like the number one thing that people talk about, but have so much trouble moving past. And I've been thinking about this a lot lately because I'm like, why do I not have imposter syndrome? And I was like, I don't know when that happened or why exactly, but when I dig in deeper to it, I think it's when I started embracing shine myself and really realizing it is about like, okay, so LaVonna, if you're not going to be good at everything, because it's not possible, right? Perfectionism isn't possible. So knowing this, what do you bring to the table? And I had to like really set in like, okay, these are the things that I am actually really good at. I'm not saying I'm the best. I'm not saying I'm perfect. And that's the language we need to get rid of, but what am I good at doing? And just really honing in on that because what it allowed me to do is shift to look at other people and what it was such an opportunity to help them shine. It was an opportunity to say to them, wait, you're good at this? Okay, I'm actually not. How can how can I turn to you to have some support and how can I support you? Like it's a two-way street, but if we don't have these conversations, then we don't know. And for me, that's, I believe how I've moved past it is because I don't put the mirrors up. And if I see somebody doing something better than I'm doing, in my head, it's a like, holy cow, look at the gift that they have. Okay, so could I get to be that level? And the second part comes with is it, do I even want it?
Right, like the superintendent comment.
Yes, I'm
Yeah,
so
yeah.
glad you said that. Could I do it? Yes, but do I want to? No, thanks.
I
Yep.
Yes.
want to go back for a moment though. So you asked yourself the question, right? Why are you not falling prey to imposter syndrome? And I think that's a good moment to bring this to the practical, right? So let's say you are a woman leader listening to this podcast, right? And you are experiencing some imposter syndrome, but you want to throw your hat in for whatever it is that assistant superintendent, superintendent principal role. I'm wondering what kinds of practical advice you could share with people who are listening to help move beyond the imposter syndrome. And you sort of gave one tip already, which is maybe just sitting down and writing down what do you bring to the table? What am I good at doing? Sitting down and literally writing a list of your strengths, having a more strengths based focus, which is part of your S, I believe. But yeah, any other tips for people experiencing this?
Yeah, so definitely the S, and in going back to what I said too about do you even want this? Because that's one of the things that was another turning point for me was people were saying, LaVonna, you have to have a doctorate to become a speaker and a consultant. Well, here I am. I've been doing this since 2008. I don't have a doctorate degree and I'm out speaking and such, but I could have adopted that belief that other people told me and then had that voice in my head to say, but you don't have a doctorate. You need to get a doctorate. You might as well either give this up or you need to go get your doctorate. I didn't want that. I didn't want to go and put that many more years of education. I have 3 degrees, 2 masters as part of than the bachelor. And I just didn't want it. And I thought, how come we don't ever ask ourselves these questions? And so I think like that's another way to dig deeper into this is like, what do you really want? Try your best to put away the voices of what others have told us and even ourselves, what society has said, maybe even a parent, a so-called possibly best friend from childhood, a teacher, unfortunately, because it's just the adults that we look up to. And are we still harnessing all of those voices and allowing those to take the lead? Because if we are, then that is definitely where imposter syndrome comes in. Because we've already listened to what other people said that we're not good enough or we have to be at a certain level to get there. So for me, I've done a ton of reflection on things that have happened to me in my life, and I don't understand why they've happened. But I had to do some healing from those. And part of the healing, for example, was I was telling one of my stories to myself about my dad walking out when I was born and never got to know him. And I never will, because one time I saw a picture of him, it was unfortunately in the newspaper, his obituary. So I'll never meet him. And I kept telling myself, why wasn't I good enough? Like,
Mm,
why did you walk out? Clearly there was something wrong with me. And I was a newborn. Like I was days old, you
mm,
know? But in my head, I had adopted this belief for so long, and I was a perfectionist. I was a people pleaser, and those things can still creep in. Don't get me wrong. I think it's a lifelong challenge that we're all facing, but the moment they do, it's having that skill set to pull back from that. And what I realized though is that I have the choice in this on what actually is the truth or what I believe to be the truth. So in this case, I believed I wasn't good enough. But could it possibly be, and I could create 500 stories for this, but the one that I land on is maybe him walking out was actually the best decision of my life.
mm,
Like maybe him not being a part of life was actually a gift. And
mm.
that's where I sit.
I love it. I
Wow.
want to go back a little bit if I can. So you talked about having a good sense of and reflecting on what you're good at and where your strengths are, which I think is super important. But I think equally, and we don't talk much about this. So I'm 5'5" on a good day. It doesn't matter how hard I practice. I will never dunk a basketball on a regulation rim. It's not going to happen. Okay. That's fine. So I'm not going to work on that. I'm okay. I'll let that go. But like, how do we because I've often had that conversation with people. I'm not good at X. Now, certainly, as a school leader, there are things that's not negotiable. You have to be good at. Fine, right? But then there's other things that why are you spending your time? It's that remember that book, that animal school book, where they make the squirrel learn how to swim and they try to make the fish fly, right?
Yes.
Come on. So, do you ever talk to folks about that? And do you see a place for that in this framework?
I don't talk about people being 5'5" dunking a ball. No. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. Well, Mike, could you rephrase what you're asking? Like what you're
So I'm thinking like just like it's almost as important from my perspective, at least I think, to when you identify the things that you're good at, also sort of let go of the things that you're not good at that don't matter so that you can focus on your strengths and being a good leader that way.
Well,
yeah,
I've
so I
heard LaVonna speak about that, and not that you let go of your weaknesses. They can improve, but they're not going to be your strengths. And the things that you're strong at, those are the areas to focus on. That's my understanding of what you've said. But sorry, go ahead. Yeah.
Yes. No, Jen, I'm glad you brought that up because it's true. Like, so Gallup research, when they did the research on strengths and such, and we look at strengths a little bit different as a complement to what they do, but it's really the strengths that you have will remain a strength, but your weaknesses will never get to a level of a strength. But where we spend our time is over on our weaknesses, over what we're not good at doing, because again, we're trying to be everything instead of saying, you know what just popped in my head? This reminds me of, and this is more business advice, but in business, it's always, hone in on your niche. Like who are you marketing to? Because they say if you market to everybody, you market to nobody. So like who? Is it kindergarten, teachers at Title One schools? Like you get nitty gritty, and that's your niche or niche, however you want to say it. And that's how I feel about the same thing when it comes to the skills and the weaknesses that we have is like we try to be all of it instead of narrowing down to these are the things that I know. And yes, I'm going to play, I'm going to experiment and find new things I'm good at doing, things I'm not good at doing. I'm going to laugh about wow, I tried to draw that. Yeah, no, that's never going to happen. Like that is just, it is not a gift. And I can embrace that, but I can still have fun and try. And I can still giggle at the fact that my stick figure is still going to be the most awful stick figure. But that's okay because there's other things that I am good at doing. So I think it's just this experimentation of learning to let go. If you can have that mindset, and it takes practice. It takes practice. There are still days where I'm like, LaVonna, how could you not? Whoa, hold on, back up. Nope, not going to be one of your gifts, and that's okay. Because thankfully, there are other people, and that's exactly who I bring on my team. Like I think about, as leaders, when you're forming a kindergarten team or a social studies department, a central office area, are you looking at the strengths and the passions of what people bring so that you can shuffle those things and pull that out of everybody? Because now that's when it's complementary because in that conversation, if we're on the same like team or department, the three of us, it is not, I don't want everyone to have the same skill set I have. That doesn't work Right. But Jen, if I know that you rock out at, for example, asking questions and really digging in deep, like I've been in your session, heard you speak, you are so phenomenal at going deep into things. So I know that if I need that, or we need that with something, or we need that aspect or that perspective, you are my go-to person. Mike, I just know to not go to you for dunking. But outside of that, no, I'm just kidding.
No,
Just kidding.
I think that's great advice for forming a team. But I also think it's great advice. When I have trouble with perfectionist tendencies, part of what helps me is that it's not just for yourself to let them go, but it's in modeling for other people. So when, it used to be the model of like, I'm the principal, I'm the first one who pulls in the parking lot and the last one who leaves at night. All that does is drive your staff crazy because they feel like, oh, well, she's perfect or he's perfect, so we all should be. As opposed to when you come in as a leader and say, I've got a team because I'm actually not so good at public speaking or I'm not so good at balancing the budget. When you share that, you're giving people permission to be human, which lowers the temperature so then they can do their jobs well. And also, they're not going to hide when they don't do well at something. When you come across as a perfectionist, everyone who works for you and with you feels they have to hide any weaknesses, any vulnerabilities, and then they're not going to get better because they're not going to say, hey, I don't know this, hey, I need help with this. So if you can't let go of it for yourself, then let go of it for the people who you're working with, is what I would say.
Yes, and that's what I was thinking too, is that it's such a gift to the other people because you get a chance to highlight them. You're going, so one of my favorite moments, it wasn't favorite at the time because I walked in and was working with this team of teachers and they all came in crying. And that was not typical. Usually it was like hugs and highs and we're so excited and it was just crying. And I said, okay, talk to me. What's going on? This led to a conversation where I ditched everything I had planned with them and went to, okay, so this is where things are. And so how can we lessen the feeling of what you have right now and even take some things off the plate? And at one point during the conversation, I had said something about sharing the things that you're good at doing and not good at doing, just like you said, Jen. And one teacher turns to me and she said, let me get this straight. You want me to go to Sarah and you want me to say, I'm not good at this. Could you help me because you are? And she goes, do you know how that makes me look? And the
Mm-hmm.
light bulb went off with me. And I went, holy cow. And I looked at her and I said, okay, hold on. And I said, Sarah, I said, if she came to you and said, she's not good at this, but could you help her? How would you feel? And she said, oh my goodness, I would love to help her. And she looked at her, she goes, I would love to do this. And I thought, that's it. Like we come from so much of our own view of ourselves and how we're going to look that we forget that what if we might actually help the other person to feel better or to step into like, hey, I have been feeling, crappy all day with thinking I'm not good at things, but man, my teammate now needs me. I am good at this.
Mm-hmm.
And we just
Yeah.
forget the other side.
Yeah, and I think if you can find ways to normalize that so that people regularly ask for help and give each other help is a way to reinforce the idea that none of us alone is perfect as a leader or as an employee, a teacher, whatever it is, and that we can help each other out. I was just I'm going to be giving a talk on school culture, and I wanted to talk about reciprocity rings. Do you know what those are? Reciprocity rings or reciprocity? It's basically an exercise where you go around and you can do it in a Google Doc, you can do it with Post-its, where every person shares, this is something I need help with. And after everyone has shared, everybody else so you can put Post-its up with what you need help with in one color, and then in another color, other people put Post-its up for how they can help. So if it's teachers, it could be, I need help. My classroom management's a mess, or I don't know how to use Chat GPT to make my lesson plans more engaging, whatever it is. And then other people put Post-its to help. And it has the dual function of both reinforcing the idea that we all have things we're not good at, but also we do have things that we can help each other with. And so it sort of normalizes it. So I was just working on that and just thinking about that. Sorry, Mike. Yeah.
No, that's okay. I was gonna say, so we have a teacher shortage, which is invariably leading to an administrator shortage. So how do we, raise the tide that lifts all boats and particularly helps us get more women into higher level positions in leadership?
I think, one of the things that is nobody's ever going to walk in and say, you know, I'm gonna take these 10 things off your plate. I think, we just got to thinking we're just gonna go ahead and remove them. Like
My
that's
God,
not
I'm dying for that.
right? Exactly. You and everybody else, right? Which means we have to take the perspective of what can I control and what can I do? And so, for example, that story I was telling you about, that they were saying how much was on their plate. And so we ended up doing activity again. I was doing this off the cuff because I did not think like this was going to happen. But we started listing all of the things that were on their plate, and then we started adding criteria to it. So I feel the same thing with leaders, like to prep yourself, like what are all the things that you're doing, and then do you have to do all of them, first of all? And I think our first instinct is going to be yes, yes. Because again, the reflection of, am I a good leader if I don't? But these are the things that are mandated. Okay, well, if they're mandated, you can't change that, right? Unless there's a conversation around us saying, hey, I know this is mandated, but here's the challenge that we're facing. So only if there's like communication to be able to handle that. So let's assume there's not. But are there other things that other people could do? And this is where I'm gonna go back to the S and the H. So like we, for example, in the company for Ignite Your Shine, we have conversations at times around what are you good at doing and what do you not love to do? What are you not passionate about? And we find, for example, there was a teammate who would wait to the 11th hour to send out an email. She wouldn't miss it, but it was like way late. And we finally had a conversation, just said, hey, talk to me about this. And she said, all right, I'll be honest. I hate writing the emails. I hate it. I was like, okay. Conversation is in front with a team. Someone else says, I actually don't mind writing emails at all. So what do? The other teammate wrote the emails. The other teammate then sent them out, and everything was done so much more fluently. I feel like these are some of the things that need to happen is not only learning the S and the H to support each other, but you can shuffle things that are on the plate to those that actually enjoy doing it. It's kind of like I view it as an 80-20 rule. 80% of the stuff, hopefully you enjoy doing and it can shuffle it, if not to the other 20% for somebody else, but there still is going to be about 20%-ish that you're going to sit here and go, I don't love doing this. And so I think the more that we have these honest and open conversations, and going back to what Jenn was saying, not being the leader that is the first one there and the last one out, unless that's what you choose to do, that's different. But the model of what we're setting for this. And so the more that we can have these conversations and understand and know each other more, then that's the chance to be able to shuffle and shift and really highlight and say, you know what am I putting on my plate? Because I think it's a reflection of me and I really don't need to do it. Can I
I
let it?
like that the question was about a leadership shortage and you answered it thinking about like how to make it more manageable. No, I think that's because that may be the question, Mike, that women are asking themselves. If I'm still more responsible for what's going on at home, do I really want to take this step when it's going to add so much more to my
Well,
plate?
and I think about how our system is set up to disadvantage women, right? Because so I became a principal when I was 25. We had a newborn. Right? So that was easy for me because my bride was taking care of everything, right? So, I got a doctorate, and somebody said to me one time, they're like, "Well, how did you have time to get a doctorate?" Well, I had a wife. Like I had a partner. I had somebody who was basically doing everything so I could do the other stuff. So think about that, right? So I could get into administration when I was 25. If you can't break in until you're in your mid 30s, it might be a point of diminishing returns because it might not be worth the money to go from working 10 months to 12 if you're only going to make another 10 grand, right? So I think so how do we get more women in earlier? And I don't know, what do we do? Is it women pulling other women up? Is it how do we do this?
Yes, and meant to, are those that are willing to advocate and to recognize some of the barriers that women face with this. I think that was a great example that you shared, Mike, about being able to have someone to be able to support you at home in that situation so you could do the things that you needed to do. And that's not always the case. Like even, and I'll say for males too, if you end up being a single parent, like it does shift. And now you begin to understand some of the other viewpoints. But when we look at, marriages and how they tend to be set up or things like that, it is about shuffling what's on the plate because I feel like sometimes the narrative is I am a woman. I have all of these responsibilities to do on top, like at home and with what I'm doing. And I cannot add one more thing to my plate. I can't do it. Like I am going to break apart. But as women, we typically figure it out and we do it anyway. That's a blessing and a curse. Like we've got the ability to figure out how to do it and such, but yet we don't let other things go. And that's why I feel like the shortage is more around all of the amount of pressure and things that are given to us and the culture that is created around that to be better, to be perfect, to making sure that somebody else doesn't climb over you. And that to me, unfortunately, I think is the hierarchy of our system, because it's not always intentional, I don't believe, but it happens that as you go up the hierarchy of positions, like let's say even assistant principal to principal, assistant superintendent to superintendent, those jobs don't have a plethora of them. It gets more and more narrow to one person is at the top. And so I think human nature, unfortunately, at times can lend itself to thinking, but there's only one. And if they're better than me, so we feel like, oh, I got to do it all then. I've got to show them that I will work until, 11 p.m. and I'll be right back up at 1 a.m. to do it. And it's unfortunate that we feel that way. But again, I'm going to go back to like, what can we relieve from the plate, from a teacher shortage to an administrator shortage to even when it comes for women, like how can we lessen, and we have to lessen this stereotype or this norm, I don't know if that's a good word for that, of what's been established for what we have to be able to do.
And I also, I do think what Mike's saying about pulling each other up. I do think, if you're listening to this now and you're a woman in a leadership position, it's very helpful for you to tap a teacher and say that you see leadership potential if you're a principal, or if you're a district leader, tap a principal and say, I could see you leading at the district level, because I think that's some of what helps to overcome the imposter syndrome. Even if in your own head you're saying, I don't think I can do that. Well, you talked about countering that narrative in your head, LaVonna. Well, what if you counter that narrative not just with your voice, but with somebody else's voice who is in that position, who says, yes, LaVonna, I think you would make an excellent assistant superintendent, chat with me, shadow me for the day, ask me any questions to see if that's something you might want to consider. So I know that's adding something onto people's plates, but hopefully it will help. That's part of changing the culture is, one leader at a time.
So
Yeah.
that's women helping women, which is fantastic, right? But if we're talking about really making a change, we gotta what do the men need to do who are in these leadership positions to encourage women to move forward and try things out? What advice would you give to the people who look like me?
Just what Jen said, but tap women on the shoulder. Let them know, because I coach leadership teams, and there's one in particular that I can just get it from her. She isn't in an administrative role, but she doesn't feel that she deserves to be there. And that's the common narrative too. But she does have a male figure that's an administrator also, who is fully, yes, you can. But that, I'm gonna sidestep for a second on that, because that's what I call the external part, right? So external praises, external beliefs in people, and sometimes that is super helpful. Like I remember my administrators, my first 5 years of teaching, LaVonna, go get your master's in educational leadership. And I was like, I have no desire to do what you do. Like that was my initial, well, years later I go, that's why I have a second master's, because I did get educational leadership. But that was two men who actually were tapping me on the shoulder and believed in me. And so I feel like, again, it's going back to understanding what is it that you want, what you're willing to do, and do you even want that? And then for us women, like the men, like understanding that you're going to hear it. You're going to, well, you may not. Some women may not speak it, but understanding the mentality and expectation of what women is from a societal point of view, and learning that, and talk to us women about it. We'd be happy to share. And not everybody has hit roadblocks or barriers, but many, many, many have. And so having that person to believe in you, but then going back to what I was saying about the external, we've got to build the internal, which is the exact point of S.H.I.N.E. I can tell you all day long that you are an unbelievable leader. I think you have such a skill set. You really do this. And it's because of, and I start giving you all these examples. All I'm teaching you is to really look for an external praise or external input to give you the value.
Mm,
No, the value has to be internal from you. And
mm,
that's again what S.H.I.N.E is about. I don't, I love telling people, for example, like what they're good at doing, but I would rather you say it. Like if somebody says, LaVonna, what have you noticed that I'm good at doing? I love to flip and say, I have definitely noticed some things, but I'd love to hear from you 3, 4, or 5 that you've noticed about you.
Yeah,
Because I
mm.
want them to admit it. Them
exactly.
to see it.
I love it. So it all comes back to shine. It comes from you.
I love it. LaVonna, you've been so generous with your time. I can't believe how fast this went. So we
Same.
want to be respectful of that. Any parting shots for, you know, aspiring leaders or leaders who are in positions to support other leaders, what would you say? Like, what's the parting shot?
We're all in this together. And when I know we say that and we see that and we hear that, but we really are. Like I was on a call today and I just said to the woman who we're looking at, she's coming onto the team for a certain role. And I said to her, I said, I have never done this before, just so you know. But you have done certain pieces of what I know is of value. And so share with me what that is. And together we're going to create this. And after 30 days, we're going to figure out, is this working? Is this not working? Those same conversations can be held as leaders is what is it that someone else brings to the table and someone else brings to the table, but you have to be okay with saying, I've never done this before because we haven't. We didn't come with parenting manual. We didn't come with a leadership manual, none of that. And so the moment that you support and going back to what Mike was saying, tapping someone on the shoulder, uplifting somebody else, and especially I'm going to throw in the women part for this, is you're creating what we call the firefly effect. And so we do Firefly is our logo, it's our mascot. And it's because when fireflies synchronize together, they have an 82% chance of survival. When they do not synchronize their lights, they have a 3% chance of survival. So we go
Mm,
from 3 to an 82. And the way that I saw
Wow.
that, I
I've never
know.
heard that before. That's super cool.
Yeah,
that is
Professor Hugh Smith did the research on it because he thought a tree had been struck by lightning, but it wasn't. It was lightning bugs, fireflies.
wow.
So the way I saw this was that we each shine on our own as a lightning bug, as a firefly, right? So we light up to get as on our own, and that's our own shine. But when we bring it together and we really start to synchronize and have these conversations and lead in this way and create that what we call the human focused culture, you actually create the firefly effect because you're inviting others to shine also. And that's all I encourage you to do is go and not only identify your own shine, identify it with others, have these conversations, and just create the firefly effect.
That's lovely. Let's end on that sentiment. And if people would like to find you, if they're interested in you as a speaker or coach, where do you recommend they look?
Yes, so you can definitely go to the website, igniteyourshine.com, and there's a plethora of information there. There's even a contact form. I'm on all social media. Well, I'm going to back up on that. I was on all social media. I am on LinkedIn primarily and Instagram at LaVonna Roth, and then it's at Ignite Your Shine, except Instagram is at Ignite Your Shine now. And then I am on Facebook some, but not a whole lot. So those three, but really LinkedIn and Instagram.
Great. Well, thank you so much for
LaVonna Roth, this was awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you for the work that you're doing on behalf of women. As someone who's married to a woman and has two daughters, one of whom just started her career as a third grade teacher. Thank you. I'm so glad I replaced myself in the system. I don't know about you guys, but here's the thing. Like, thank you, because this work has to be done. And my daughter's already sick of me hearing that me telling her that she needs to go get certified to be an administrator. But thank you.
Thank
Thank you.
you. This was awesome. I can't believe the time either. Thank you both for all that you do because this podcast, it reaches so many people to give them a chance to understand all different concepts. So I thank both of you so much for what you're doing.
Thank you. Have a great time. Enjoy celebrating with your daughter.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the School Leadership Show, a podcast for aspiring and practicing school leaders. Send your comments, questions, and show ideas to me, Mike, at schoolleadershipshow.com. And please consider rating the podcast in iTunes and leaving a comment. And definitely pass the show along to your colleagues.